Nigeria's Niger Delta is a region filled with the lush grain of plants that serve as food for people and animals, and a source of revenue. The Niger Delta is blessed from splayed palm fronds and their ripened reddened seeds, the dirt-covered roots of the cassava plants, the yellowing pods of the cocoa plants, the poultry that produces millions of eggs every year, and to the bountiful fish that can be found in the region. Nigeria's almost complete dependence on crude oil as its source of revenue has led to the underdevelopment of the other value chains, especially the agricultural value chains of food and cash crops, and this lack of opportunities often triggered conflict. To mitigate these brewing issues, the Foundation for Partnership Initiatives in the Niger Delta, known as PIND, a Nigerian non-profit, was established in 2010 with initial funding from Chevron to promote peace and equitable economic growth in Nigeria's Niger Delta region. Today, we continue to forge multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder partnerships at the regional, national, and international levels among local businesses, the government, and private sector corporations. PIND understood that stability and economic development were two prongs of the same issue, so we began to look at ways to sustainably impact the economy through agriculture.
When PIND came into the Niger Delta, we discovered that there was a lot of inefficiency among small and medium enterprises and a whole lot of actors in that, in the agri value chain, the agri sector.
From the study, we realized that despite the fact that there was huge opportunities in the sector, the knowledge level of farmers was low. There was poor extension services from the government, and there was little or no private sector consultants or service providers in the region.
PIND was undaunted. With further gap analysis, it became obvious that the focus needed to be on upgrading key market systems that the poorer populations depended on for their livelihood. Thus, PIND designed the Market Systems Development Project to support farmers and small enterprises in key agricultural sectors to improve their productivity, increase income, and reduce poverty. This would deliver shared benefits to all market actors, farmers, suppliers, retailers, contractors, manufacturers, associations, and institutions in a simple yet sustainable way. Accordingly, PIND adopted the market systems approach to pilot solutions that address the systemic constraints impeding growth in three key agricultural value chains of aquaculture or fisheries, cassava, and palm oil value chains. In the 1960s, Nigeria was the world's leading producer of palm oil. Though the country still remains one of the largest producers, it now meets domestic demand through imports. The Niger Delta accounts for roughly 57% of Nigerian palm oil production. Similarly, Nigeria is the largest cassava producer in the world, averaging an annual production of about 52 million metric tons over the last 5 years. And the aquaculture or fisheries sector is one of the most important sectors in Nigeria, employing 8.6 million people. These three sectors contribute to the livelihoods and the household food security of Nigeria's Niger Delta region. PIND conducted a value chain analysis of these sectors and identified several systemic constraints inhibiting growth in them. These constraints ranged from poor knowledge of best sector practices, weak linkages between market actors, lack of farmers' access to credit operating and expanding enterprises, low efficiency of processing equipment, and lack of commercial orientation of farmers and processors were also identified as inhibiting factors. Poor coordination between value chain actors, lack of access to new technology markets, inadequate and inaccessible government extension service. PIND, therefore, initiated the Value Chain Project to address these constraints, stimulate considerable growth, and improve the efficiency of the sectors.
The value chain approach is one method of effectively linking large numbers of small farmers or micro-enterprises into more competitive, growing and viable industries at the local, national and global level.
Many micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, faced challenges limiting their competitiveness, such as poor technical and business management skills, poor access to finance, weak access to large institutional buyers. With this understanding, PIND focused on improving the capacity of local MSMEs so they could grow their market and compete in domestic, regional, and global markets and contribute to wealth and job creation.
We're able to understand that it's not only funds that is the need of businesses. Businesses also need people to buy from them, people to patronize their services.
We've increased in the people patronizing us. And so if people are patronizing us, we are making money. I can tell you that if we're able to have a kind of an income of maybe 100,000, tell you that we are having 500,000. You can just look at the margin I'm talking about.
With a successful demonstration of the viability of these models, PIND did another study, this time in the cocoa and poultry sectors, as they have growth potential and the ability to increase income and employment. As a result of poor quality, Nigerian cocoa beans are being sold at a discount price in the international market, resulting in low profitability. And in the poultry sector, the government imposed ban on poultry import raised the price of chicken meat and provided a strong window of opportunity for local production. Some of the constraints in these sectors were similar to those in the aquaculture, cassava and palm oil value chains. And like those sectors, PIND designed projects to increase local producers' competitiveness and enable local processors to upgrade quality and capacity to increase supply to sophisticated end markets. PIND didn't do all of these alone. Under a strategic partnership with USAID signed in February 2011, PIND and USAID implemented the Maximizing Agricultural Revenue and Key Enterprises in Targeted Sites Market 2 project from 2012 to 2017. Further partnered with the UK's FCDO-funded Market Development MADE project and a host of private companies and farming associations to improve the performance and incomes of the region's poor, rural smallholder farmers through private sector demand-driven market interventions, while simultaneously contributing to food security and poverty reduction. As a result of PIND's approach and partnerships in the last decade, a couple of groundbreaking successes have been recorded in the Niger Delta. $614,503 farmers and micro, small and medium enterprises were reached with information and services on agricultural and business best practices by PIND's Market Development Interventions, Market 2 and MADE projects. 396,454 of the reached smallholder farmers and MSMEs improved agricultural practices and adopted innovative, climate-smart technologies and earned a net increase in income of 23.7 billion naira. Over 55,000 new full-time jobs facilitated in PIND-supported sectors, with 17.9 billion naira in investments leveraged into the agriculture and enterprises sector for innovations and business growth. There is now a stable commercial supply chain for quality agricultural inputs and improved farming, harvesting, post-harvest, and processing technologies for farmers and processors in the market sector we work in. Smallholder farmers and MSMEs now have access to a functional service market to supply technical and business support services, quality inputs, and improved technologies on a fair and affordable commercial basis. The service market was weak and almost non-existent before our interventions. And over 2,600 service providers facilitated by PIND coordinated a joint market response to the 2020 pandemic threat that helped reduce the impact on the farmers and MSMEs.
In fact, a lot of farmers now call me Mr. Banker because I'm now a specialist on oil palm. I only had one shop in my headquarters, which is Edo State, and another shop in Akwa Ibom State, which is my branch. But after PIN, as I speak with you, we have 3 outlets in Edo State. My people are asking me to come back and teach them more. So I intend to expand in Akwa Ibom, 3 or more locations.
I think what is the real accomplishment that I see when I look back at what we've done is that we've created a very strong and capable development institution in the Niger Delta that didn't exist before. It's very unique.
PIN's model works. It has been shown to be demonstrable, adaptable, and sustainable. The next 10 years is about facilitating even more inclusive, sustainable, and diversified economy through the stimulation of technical and entrepreneurial systems that reduces poverty through market linkages, jobs facilitation, and income increase.
So the pressure is on us now how to service these farmers because my farmers' base have increased. My customers' base has increased, and consequently, my revenue has increased. So I give kudos to PIN for at least making this happen to me.
The Niger Delta comprises 9 states with 31 million people from more than 40 ethnic groups. The early 2000s saw the region marred in various conflicts, from election violence, communal clashes, and tribal uprisings to court wars, militant attacks on security agents, and retaliatory military killings. As the decade came to a close, the undercurrents of instability increased until there was full-blown militancy in the region. There was active vandalization and outright destruction of oil exploring facilities and wells of storage, one of Nigeria's highest sources of income. While these had regional and national implications, the effect of this conflict on the people, communities, and economic activities were even more telling, like election violence.
Because of election violence, now some of the shops are closed. My mother also owns a shop there. She doesn't open it any longer. That was a place where you could go meet everybody, people you've not seen for years. You see them, but now you cannot see them again. Economy has gone down.
They pay me for body, and now my people who are the rule, all of them they cry. Say they don't see food shop because of this fat way they ground.
The United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, or SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, shows that while no goal is more important than the other, all forms of development are hinged on peace and stability.
Violence destroys.
It deters a society from moving.
You have no progress.
There won't be development, there won't be growth, there won't be happiness and joy in the society.
Burning houses, shootings, and people were just running here and there.
It makes people, the masses, scared. There will be total backwardness.
There cannot be development because conflict destroys.
Previously, without stability in the region, productivity dropped significantly and caused more people to be thrown into poverty. In a region providing the bulk of Nigeria's revenue, instability just couldn't stand. So it became imperative that we solve these problems to restore productivity across all fronts and boost economic growth and development.
So PIN is really doing a lot, to ensure that the region is stabilized, that there's less conflict, de-escalate conflicts, and ensure that there's overall peace in the region.
PIN started designing approaches that would be deliberate in addressing the conflict in the region. The overarching strategy was spread across 3 major areas: the Integrated Peace and Development Unit, IPDU, the Partners for Peace, P4P Network, and the Warri Multi-Stakeholder Platform, MSP. The Integrated Peace and Development Unit, IPDU, was PIN's response to rapidly changing dynamics on the ground. The IPDU promoted collaboration and synergy amongst existing local, regional, and national actors in both public and private sectors to address conflict, early warning, and early response, known as EWER. There is a focus on gender and youth, and an emphasis on practical solutions to peace building and conflict mitigation. By design, IPDU responded to emerging threats in a timely, adaptive, and actionable manner. It also identified and mobilized appropriate actors and resources via 3 interdependent components: research, capacity building, and applied learning, aimed at early targeting and mitigating potential drivers of instability.
When we identify issues of concern in society, we reach out to our network that is made up of different, personalities, professionals that are also peace actors. Then when we identify such gap that needed to be filled, we don't run away when there are issues. We try to address them to the best of our ability, bringing all peace actors together to see how we can have a peaceful society where development will thrive.
The Partners for Peace Network, or P4P, was designed as an independent network supported by PIN. Their mission is to build social capital around peace building through amplifying the voices of peace actors, building a network of self-identified agents of peace, and leveraging that network through facilitation, small grants, and capacity building. This network includes thousands of stakeholders like the youth, women, business organizations, civil society, private companies, and donors committed to promoting peaceable livelihoods.
If we come together and fight in one voice, in unity, we will gain more development, we will gain peace, we will gain many things.
Like the 2 areas of focus in the preceding conversation, the multi-stakeholder platforms known as MSPs for peace building were designed to support and enable socio-economic development programs to improve the standard of living. These platforms empower communities to achieve a peaceful and enabling environment for equitable economic growth. The platforms included P4P, the acronym for Partners for Peace, and projects PIN established through its non-violent election project, Shun Wahala, Community Stakeholders Network, and Prevent Teams.
What brought about Warri MSP is what we are experiencing. We felt there is need for the Jaws and Securis in this area to live together peacefully.
After 10 years of implementing these strategies, PIN's peace-building program results and P4P reflect that these approaches worked. 20,324 Niger Delta conflict data points for early warning and early response, also known as EWA, were made publicly available on the Peace Map, which is populated with conflict information from peace actors. In addition, 9,610 self-identifying peace actors were facilitated with their capacities strengthened to tackle conflict. And 860 emerging conflicts were mitigated by the capable peace actors.
From what I've come to understand in peace building, you don't
take your hands off because nobody is quarreling or nobody is fighting. You understand that if you don't address the root causes of these problems, it will come back.
Sustaining this peace and fostering stability is now the goal of the future. Therefore, PIND is launching a new 2020 to 2024 strategic third phase, with the focus shifting from expanding the P4P network to deepening the peace-building capacities and actions of the facilitated members of the network to foster a more enabling environment for sustainable broad-based economic development. A peaceful Niger Delta has the potential to grow economically and set the pace for the rest of the country as it develops and thrives.
Behind every story is me, is you, and everyone we know, connecting to each other, working together for the good of all.
Assessment of PIND stakeholder consultations showed the capacity building of Niger Delta-based organization was a primary concern for stakeholders throughout the region. Capacity building helps individuals and organizations to do their work smarter, more effectively, and at a larger scale, meaning more impact to those they serve. One of the first things PIND started to do was build the capacity of individuals and local organizations, because people and organizations become more productive with innovative and improved learning and development cultures. The areas where PIND supports capacity building include communications, development, financial management and reporting, information management, operational systems, organizational governance, program management, and strategic planning.
And my colleague came for the capable training to be able to build our capacity in effective service delivery, in working with different grant agents, and also to build our skills in writing successful proposals.
I have been to so many trainings. Funny enough, the way I understood how to write proposal in this course, in this 1 week, I've not understood it like this in the time past.
PIND's capacity building program strengthens and empowers the institutional and technical capacity of networks, organizations, business associations, service providers, and individuals working with PIND's economic development and peace building programs, the core focus areas of PIND's work. PIND's capacity building program works with governments, business membership organizations, civil society organizations, communities, and service providers. Over the last decade, the capacity building portfolio used 3 projects as vehicles to achieve its objectives: the Local Governance Leadership Empowerment Advocacy and Development, or LEAD project, the Civil Society Strengthening Advocacy and Civic Engagement, or SACE, projects with the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and the Capacity Building for Local Empowerment, or CAPABLE project.
The CAPABLE program demonstrates the partners, PIND Foundation and Crown Agents' commitment to working with civil society organizations. The program is designed to build the business skills of civil society organizations in order to ensure that private sector social investment delivers development impact, bringing forward well-structured proposals and demonstrating program management capabilities in order to win the confidence of development partners and grant makers, and to gain funding for the much-needed development initiatives.
PIND replicated the learnings from the initial capacity building project in our Business Linkages initiative. This initiative was designed to identify and facilitate new linkage opportunities for MSMEs, that's micro, small, and medium enterprises, including the ability to write proposals and mobilize funds for projects, leading to increased income and broader economic development. In partnership with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office funded known as Defeat Made project, PIND began a training and mentoring program on the market systems approach for local organizations in order to increase the availability of the expertise in the region. PIND continued the practical mentorship program for interested, co-facilitating organizations to respond effectively to the COVID-19 pandemic threat. This increased their ability to attract funding and implement quality development programs for social welfare and economic growth. PIND's capacity building achievements include 38.1 billion naira was invested by the federal and state governments, private sector, and donor agencies for development programs. 161 civil society and business membership organizations were trained and are providing improved community responsive services. 93 trained local organizations are accessing funds for development programs by applying the skills they learned from PIND. Throughout PIND's recent strategic plan, through our capacity building efforts, we will continue to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals 4 and 8, that is, quality education, decent work, and economic growth, respectively. With improved education, more organizations and individuals can build the skills to find and provide decent employment, which contributes directly to strengthening the Niger Delta and Nigeria.
In many countries and communities, development, whatever it may be at any given moment, usually sidelines three large marginalized groups: women, the youth, and people with disabilities. In Nigeria, women make up half the population. The median age is 18.4 years and around 25 million people have disabilities. Not fully maximizing the contributions of these groups to national and regional development directly reduces Nigeria's ability to be productive, increase income, and attain its full economic potential.
Sometimes our education system doesn't really prepare us for jobs. So you probably have a degree or something, but you're not employable.
Almost about the end of my final year exams, I went in search of a job and I got one anyway. But the pay was actually so low, I had to consider other alternatives.
PIND envisions an egalitarian and peaceful society that guarantees equal rights and equitable access to and control of productive resources. This ensures that individuals are empowered to create wealth and overcome poverty and disease irrespective of gender and other demographic differentials. Including women in PIND's programs was the first step to targeting marginalized populations in a process called gender mainstreaming. At PIND, we defined this as, open quote, a process of ensuring equitable participation of women and men and making their concerns and experiences an integral part of the project and program design, implementation, operations, monitoring, and evaluation, close quote. Specific actions were written into PIND's program and project design to ensure gender mainstreaming. For peace building, women were actively engaged in the Partners for Peace, that is the P4P, and peace actors were selected to be change agents in their communities. These women's stories were then highlighted in stories that showed their actions to foster peace in the communities. With the Market Development Project, PIN sought to understand the power dynamics between men and women in the Niger Delta, including them in defining value chain constraints and solutions, deliberately including men and women in value chains, supporting women's economic advancements, addressing specific gendered needs of women in the value chains, and promoting gender equitable market solutions. PIN also specifically targeted women's associations and cooperatives, used women as lead farmers, supported women to break gender myth to accessing economic opportunities, and linked women and men to microcredits. To get Niger Deltans to access energy, PIN ensured that men and women had access to new technologies to increase their participation in these value chains. In terms of capacity building, women's and men's voices were positioned to demand better services. PIN also promoted access to resources for women, built the capacity of men and women's associations, business membership organizations, and other local actors in public decision-making, local governance, and project development. However, PIN did not stop there. It was important that other partners were replicating these approaches in their programming to make gender mainstreaming for sustainable development a norm. So PIN took on sensitization drives for partners and beneficiaries on gender mainstreaming. The last approach was through analysis and advocacy. PIN provided adequate analysis of gender differentials to inform development planning, highlight women and men's constraints in accessing economic opportunities, and ensure women's representation at advocacy events, training, and research studies. PIN also actively participated in international days like International Women's Day, World Water Day, 16 Days of Activism, and other activities to promote women's inclusion in the Niger Delta's growth and development. A lot of the issues frustrating youth development in the region can be traced to a lack of strong youth leaders, the ability to have realistic expectations for the future, and an array of soft skills that are necessary for employment. As a result, PIN began to design strategies to address some of these problems. With a successful demonstration of the pluses of including youth in the development of the Niger Delta region, PIN expanded this inclusion to other areas of its economic development and peace-building programs. But it was more than disaggregating data or meeting targets. PIN believed in the collective power of all stakeholders, especially young people who are traditionally ignored in development strides, in improving the economy and stability of the Niger Delta. In 2018, PIN sought ways to further include young people in its programming. This time, however, the idea was to have a project specifically for the youth. This project was coined the Niger Delta Youth Employment Pathways, or NDEP for short.
To basically look at alternative ways to begin to address the challenge of youth unemployment, particularly in the Niger Delta.
Over 90% of the people we are training are not going into paid employment, but they are starting their own farms.
PIN's inclusivity approach also ensured that people with disabilities were not left out of the opportunities in economic growth and sustained peace in the Niger Delta.
They are passionate, they are committed, they touch the lives of the less privileged in the society, and they sacrifice a lot by contributing their hard-earned resources to build the capacities of the female youths in the society and incorporate them into their membership and train them on how they could have better visions and become better citizens in the society.
What we have done that make me really feel proud is for us to extend, our goodness to others. We have been able to be visiting motherless baby homes at least once a year. We have been visiting hospitals, rendering help to those, especially those that cannot pay their bills, the little way we can.
By 2020, 25,930 women smallholder farmers and MSMEs in aquaculture, cassava, cocoa, palm oil, and poultry were reached with information on best agricultural and business practices, smart technology, and quality inputs. 4,426 new jobs for women were facilitated in agriculture, building construction, and ICT sectors in the Niger Delta by adopting improved practices, new skills, technologies, and inputs. 1,635 women-owned MSMEs received various forms of gender-aligned business development services adapted to address the challenges related to the COVID-19 operating environment. 17,336 women farmers and MSMEs improved KAP, resulting from the information gained that stirred improved productivity and additional income for them. In addition, 634 women and women-owned MSMEs accessed funding to start or expand multiple income-generating activities. 67 women applied skills in conflict management garnered from various peace-building and capacity-building workshops and mentoring sessions, such as project management, conflict resolution, early warning reporting, conflict sensitivity, and peace building. So far, 4,355 youth have gained market-relevant skills for employment in emerging growth sectors, and 1,933 youth were linked to waged employment and enterprise startups in emerging growth sectors. At the center of PIN's 2020 to 2024 strategic plan are the achievement of gender inclusivity and the empowerment of poor women, people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups in contributions to SDG 5, that is, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 5. This is key to achieving equitable economic growth and development in Nigeria's Niger Delta region.
There are 17 global goals that all the nations of the world have signed onto. They are supposed to guide hastening development in the most underdeveloped countries and strengthen the growth trajectory of developed nations. One of these goals is access to affordable and clean energy. Two key targets of this goal are ensuring universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services, and expanding infrastructure and upgrading technology for supplying modern and sustainable energy services for all developing countries by 2030. Nigeria, a developing nation, is signed onto these global goals. However, Nigeria is still working towards providing regular access to electricity through its national electricity grid. For example, in the Niger Delta, between 60 and 70% of communities are not connected to this national grid, which translates to 18 million people without access to electricity.
So we are in Ogedimigo now. This community has no form of electricity, but as far as we're concerned, for the past 60 years that this country has existed, they have not.
Many Niger Delta communities, especially the rural communities, are not connected to the national grid. Meaning they have no access to electricity. This translates into loss of opportunities for many MSMEs who will rely on electricity to power their businesses. They will have to rely in many cases on alternative generation, self-generation using petrol or diesel generators to power their businesses, and this means they're going to have an increased cost of running businesses. We see a similar situation with the households in the Niger Delta. They're not able to enjoy basic amenities like lighting due to lack of electricity. These are the things that PIN's access to energy program is trying to address.
In every problem lies an untapped opportunity. PIN saw the opportunity to facilitate off-grid, low-carbon, low-cost solar solutions to meet local needs and launch an access to energy intervention that seeks to promote economic activity in the coastal communities. So in the 2015 to 2019 strategic phase, PIN assessed energy requirements and possible solutions for underserved coastal communities and incentivized private renewable energy providers to develop business models specific to community customers. PIN then fostered engagement between them and community stakeholders to secure a demand and supply buy-in critical to the long-term viability for investors. Access to energy enables people to work their way out of poverty and improve well-being, such as through health and education, especially for women and children. As a result, PIN's strategy was built around an energy vision and plan that captured the priorities of energy access and affordability to be immensely beneficial to the rural riverine communities of the Niger Delta. The strategy also sought to increase energy efficiency to benefit the environment, reduce economic costs, and increase the use of energy from renewables such as solar home systems. PIN therefore began engaging with private sector actors and community leaders and stakeholders to learn about the opportunities and advantages in energy carbon solar solutions for coastal communities. They also began to promote and, when necessary, co-create beneficial products and services that communities desire to buy, and those that revolve around energy technologies, trainings, and other services. The last aspect was bringing in partners to contribute resources to implement a private sector-led business model of the energy carbon solution. Working with private clean energy providers and community associations, PIN facilitated the setup of 6 energy cabins in 6 coastal communities. The installations include 1. A 20 kilowatt solar mini grid at Molutenyi community in Elaje local government area, and another 2.0 solar mini grid at Bokoda community, both in Ondo State, through a grant from Chevron Corporations to power its global memorandum of understanding communities using energy cabin. 2. A 20.06 kilowatt solar hybrid energy cabin in Lomileji community and a 19 kilowatt energy cabin in the Obejedo community in Ondo State by A4&T. 2 20 kilowatt solar mini grids in Aweye and Odefado community in Ondo State using funds leveraged from the Elaje Regional Development Committee, preceded by a partner-led assessment of viable energy cabin models in largely underserved communities in Egbema Gbaramatu Communities Development Foundation and Ishekiri Regional Development Communities supported by PIN and Chevron Nigeria Limited. Finally, 20 kilowatt of solar-powered energy cabin in Ogeye community in Warri North local government area of Delta State. They provided reliable electricity to a group of businesses and households in the communities. The energy cabins helped them reduce business costs, extend their business hours, and power large load appliances.
Since the brought solar to this community has been helpful for the environment, and it helps me personally to read at night. It's helping to do my own work that I give me from school. The solar is very good, no noise. You read peace without any say like the generator is too dull. It's not like that.
But here in Bagira, as I am talking to you, we are no longer using generator.
These are things we have been expecting for a long time. We, Sangana community, we are fishermen, and most of the fishes we send it to the hinterland. But because of the generators that have been powering the fridges got spoiled, the fishes got spoiled too, we are not happy of all this development until this project has come. And we appreciate, the community appreciate. God will continue to bless you people.
So now, as una carry this room come, so it go help all of us. It go help us because we dey expect to make this thing last us.
Now we heard that there is cold room in fish tank here. It go help us because sometimes our fish dey rotting.
After a decade of studying the landscape, forging strategies, adopting and adapting approaches, and expanding access to energy, the results began to speak for themselves. 1,082 underserved and off-grid coastal businesses and households access clean energy technologies for the very first time. Restaurants, smoking kitchens, hair salons, retail shops, tailoring shops, butchers, micro hotels, fishing gear shop, boat spare part retailers, pharmacy shops, local booking agencies, and mobile money booths represent examples of businesses served by the energy cabins. PIND also accelerated the market uptake of solar energy cabin-based micro and mini grids as an energy for development solution for off-grid communities that is attracting a host of financial routes such as community funding, private sector investment, and donor grants. With discussions on reducing emissions that affect the Earth's climate, clean energy is one way to go. PIND, through its access to energy projects, is showing Nigeria that generating electricity can be less centralized and more molecular, presenting opportunities for businesses to reduce costs and increase income in their various sectors. The future is powered by clean energy.
In 1999, Nigerians went to the polls to vote a new government that became the nation's fourth republic. It was a time of great hope for charting the course of the nation's future in the hopes of achieving the greatest economic growth, strategic development, and improved human indices. Governments began to work on policies geared at achieving this, but there was a catch. There was a significant gap in the amount of reliable data available to guide development planning and learning. Why was this important? Accurate socioeconomic information helps create better informed stakeholders. Together, they are vital to the effectiveness of any program and critical ingredients for improving development practice and creating an enabling environment for growth to occur in the country. PIND designed its analysis and advocacy program to address this gap by gathering data and generating credible analysis of the key economic, institutional, and peace-building constraints. It then sought to increase understanding and awareness of these constraints among stakeholders interested in the region. The strategy identified ways to inform and influence government decisions and policies through data and evidence to remove identified systematic constraints in value chains PIND supports. It positioned PIND as an organization able to receive and implement donor grants in the region. It promoted a culture of partnership, collaboration, coordination, and shared learning amongst development partners in addressing systemic constraints to economic growth. It improved understanding and created awareness on systemic constraints and enablers to inclusive, equitable economic growth in the region, and created opportunities for dialogue, reflection, and debates among development actors and interested stakeholders to support ongoing and future economic growth initiatives. PIND deployed some platforms to facilitate this vision. 1. The Niger Delta Development Forum, first held in 2012, and ND Link. Other ways to achieve these goals included support to state and federal governments, awareness for development action using media for development and advocacy calendars, and deploying the use of socio-economic data through the Small Research Grants Program, SRJP, and the Models of Development and Experiential Learning, MODEL. The Niger Delta Development Forum, known as NDDF, was an advocacy platform to inform, influence, and leverage resources from public, private, and civil society organizations. NDDF promotes models, approaches, and strategies to attain equitable economic growth. ND-Link, on the other hand, was designed to be a growing online platform for a diverse set of development practitioners focused on the sustainable development of the region. Through engagement and advocacy, PIND signed a partnership agreement with the Ondo State Government's Wealth Creation Agency, for a pilot project to develop the agricultural entrepreneurship skills of young graduates through cultivation and processing of cassava in December 2015. This agreement was signed only a month after the 2015 NDDF, where representatives from Cross River, Imo, Delta, and Abia state governments demonstrated their commitment to regional growth. PIND also partook in the Niger Delta Way Forward Forum alongside development partners and federal government agencies and ministries following engagement with the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Less than a year later, PIND signed a partnership agreement with the Cross River State Government on Saturday, April 30th, 2016, to advance and facilitate sustainable development of Cross River State. This partnership fed into the Cross River State Government's 30-year development plan and followed our previous work to increase collaboration with government at the state and federal level. With this partnership, PIND was pegged to work through the Office of the Chief Economic Advisor in cooperation with relevant state ministries and civil society organizations to 1. Develop state's agricultural economy with emphasis on cocoa, cassava, aquaculture, and oil palm value chains. 2. Produce a strategic document to help the state's economic development planning. 3. To develop new strategies and policies for youth development. 4. To improve the state's capacity for conflict mitigation and mediation and support the state government in the selection of right partners for specific sector development.
Growth is inclusive, where the various groups in the society, particularly the youth, the women, and the poor, are part of that growth.
The bottlenecks that impede growth of our internally generated revenue. Fine, we're growing, but we know we can do better.
We ensure rights subsidization plan put in place to keep alive this initiative.
Along with deepening its relationship with state governments through the region, the Foundation is also reaching out to media houses with presence in the Niger Delta region to drive advocacy for agricultural development by helping sensitize key audiences in private and public sector on needed policy objectives for the promotion of pro-poor development in key sectors. This agreement took effect from May 1st, 2016. From there, PIND moved to Delta State. As part of its support of state and federal governments, PIND negotiated a partnership with the Delta State government to inform and influence the policies, decisions, knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors of the government. Together, we support pro-poor, equitable economic growth, and a legacy of sustainable peace throughout the state. Prior to PIND's launch, the Niger Delta had little donor presence because of the difficulty in operating in the region. After 10 years of advocating to government as an enabling solution to reducing poverty and fostering stability, the Foundation's presence and operation supports easy takeoff and implementation of partners projects and has renewed donor interest, influencing additional investment of 38.1 billion Nigerian naira by federal and state governments, the private sector, and donor agencies into the region for development programs. 88 policy papers, policies, and plans produced towards engendering an enabling environment for development. The download of 36,134 of development resources from our ND Link online platform and 16.7 million visitors to the site has increased the availability of information and data on Niger Delta needs, challenges, development priorities, and opportunities. PIND's technical support enabled government officials and agencies to publicly validate the Abia State Long-Term Development Plan in November 2020. When implemented, the 2019 plan will transform the state's development efforts to a more holistic approach that will generate economic opportunities and an improved standard of living. Similarly, the 2019 draft Edo State Long-Term Development Plan was produced through project management and technical support from PIND. At the request of the Edo State Executive Governor, PIND trained the state civil servants on the value and development of a long-term plan that would inform the plan's implementation when finalized and launched in early 2021. Collectively, both Abia and Edo state governments displayed strong ownership of the plans by each committing 20 million Nigerian naira to support development processes. As part of PAIN's strategic plan for 2020 to 2024, the organization hopes to 1. Influence spending and funding from the government, donors, and private sector organizations on new projects. 2. Support the economic development program in addressing emerging advocacy issues of access to arable land for smallholder farmers. 3. Address constraints on small businesses brought about by multi-taxation and illegal levies, and provide support to the peace-building efforts to institutionalize strategies that will promote security and conflict prevention.